If you are looking for poetry editing on YouTube, maybe you're an Instagram poet, TikTok poet, Threads poet, or just a poet in general, you got poems, you're trying to get them looked at to get some feedback and things. This is the show for you. Welcome to First Words. This is a show brought to you by Diversis, where we are here to help you develop your poetry in a way that's professional, help you find ways to also get income from your work so it can sustain you creatively and financially. And today we have a piece by poet on Instagram from The Painted Up John. I was really excited when I saw their name too, because I'm originally from Philly, and I saw on their name they had the word John. I was like, wait, what? Are there Philly people out here? Okay, I'm really excited to see them. This is from Alicia. Um, we said a while ago we would get to this piece, and things keep on happening. So this is not the format for editing. Originally, we were going to print it out, do it on like a whiteboard. We'll have to do that another time, maybe with another piece. But we do want to get to the poem today. We're going to be editing it, trying to find out what are some things that are working, things that are bringing us pause, or maybe could be opportunities to develop further, and things like that. Again, we're going to try to approach the piece from a perspective of kind of just coming at it fresh, not much experience, kind of going line by line, seeing what things stand out. So that's definitely the perspective to take. I have not done a ton of readings of the poem, so in order to maintain that fresh perspective. Let's begin just by reading it. This poem is called Tone Dial. What is America to me? Beauty is contingent on the lightness of the skin. Glorification of melanin is a sin. A place where liberty isn't guaranteed. Lies are the option. Agreed. 2023 loves overrated and fictional, steady quoting Netflix and chill vibes as if settling for less is a better principle. It's a shame to see illiteracy is nutritional. What is America to me? A place where people lose hopes and dreams instead of following on our own visuals. We sip society's lean, force fed lies. We've been corrupted by the wound, selling souls for bodily rituals. Stereotypical, taking social media narcotics as if clinical. We become fiends for these prescribed subliminal online trends, become our new traditional habitual. I hope what I'm spitting is considerable. Don't you know ABC News is all fictional? No fact from history class was absolute nor conventional. All us blacks still get treated miserable. And that's pitiful, so my position is pivotal. That's why my news is deliverable. You can hate me all you like, but you still worship Sam's principle. Thanks again to Paint Up John, excuse me, what am I saying? Paint Up Joint. Paint Up John for sending us this piece. All right, well, let's kind of dive into things, starting with the title. So, tone dial. I thought that was really interesting because I think I would have expected dial tone, if anything like that. But instead, we get this version, we get the splitting of it. So, to me, that kind of implies that we're going to be taking a look at something and kind of subverting it, twisting it around, playing with it a little bit. So we're going to be taking a look at that. And look, she's here. That's what's up. Sorry, this isn't quite the video I had planned on making, but this week is wild. We're doing our poetry retreat this week and things like that. So things are kind of crazy. But we're going to be checking the piece. If you got questions as I go through this, let me know. So I think the title is doing work in the sense of suggesting exploration and potentially taking a concept and idea and playing with it, twisting it. I think also, what does it imply? You know, we think of like the tone, dial tones, tone dials, and things like that. I think there's a sense of a disconnect, or like not being able to reach someone, or there's also a sense of like repetition that can be annoying, that can be frustrating, that can also imply a lack of action, right? Because if you're on the phone do younger generations even know what a dial tone is? Like, you know, I think there's this sense of lack of action that it kind of conveys as well. So I think that title is doing work. Um, it also allows us to pay special attention to repetitions because the tone, there's that sense of the repetition of the sound. And so I think that can help drive out some of the sound repetitions and things that come in later. Okay. All right, so let's kind of go just like line by line, and it's also late here. And we had a long day as a family day. It was a fine day, but it was a long day. So I'm gonna be doing my best as we go through this. So, what is America to me? Okay, so we kind of have the central question of the poem. What is America to me? Taking a large concept, um, the idea of a nation, a country, and what does this whole place mean? Okay, so we're not even talking about definitions, we're also talking about personal definitions. So, what does this whole concept mean to me as an individual from the speaker's perspective? Just from a spelling perspective, beauty is contingent with the capital C on contingent. Maybe that's just a slip, or maybe it's really intentional. Like we're putting a lot of weight on contingent. I'm not sure. Beauty is contingent on the lightness of the skin. Isn't that interesting? So the poem starts, "What is America to me?" And then we get another declaration. So we start with a question, and we get this declaration: "Beauty is contingent on the lightness of the skin. Glorification of melanin is a sin." It's almost. I think that's an interesting progression. Like, what is America to me? Then beauty is contingent on lightness of the skin. It almost feels like this, like two starts to the poem. But you kind of need that. What is America to me? For this line, place where liberty isn't guaranteed. So, beauty is contingent on the lightness of the skin. So I think it's kind of doing some interesting work where at first it almost feels like an indirect answer to the question, "Was America to me?" Instead of being like, "Oh, America is a place where liberty isn't guaranteed." No, you're saying, "Was America to me?" Beauty is contingent on the lightness of the skin. It's that kind of like side angle into the answer to the question. I think is interesting. I think there's some opportunities potentially with line breaks to play around with it, especially if this is a poem that's going to be about subversion. Um, like a bit ironic. Something you could do is like potentially like move beauty up to here, and then like take off like this or something like that. Like, was America to me? Beauty contingent on the lightness of the skin. Okay, so it starts off sound nice. What is America to me? Beauty. Oh, that's nice. Contingent on the lightness of the skin. Oh, I know where this poem's going. Okay, very different direction, you know. So I think there's some opportunities to potentially play around with line breaks. It's also is this your longest line of the poem? No, there's some longer ones down here, but this is one of the longest lines of the poem. So it's kind of standing out a little bit, which isn't a bad thing. But the question then would be, why is this line so long compared to the others? Maybe because we think it's a real central component. Beauty is contingent on lightness of the skin. Glorification of melanin is a sin. So they feel like kind of like these lines go together. I'm kind of curious about the stanza lengths. How long are these stanzas? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So basically, we had like 9, 9, 8, and then the 8 we split in the quatrains. So why did we lose a line? Oh, we lost a line because we didn't repeat the "What is America to me?" Anyways, so just kind of like looking at that long line. Beauty contingent on the lightness of the skin. I like the on the lightness of the skin. Oh, I always confuse anapes and dactyls. I like the rhythm, like da 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 da. Consistent, helps with the flow a lot. Glorification of melanin is a sin. Okay, so there's a lot of focus here on issues related to obviously race, but skin color, and then we go from there. A place where liberty isn't guaranteed. Lies are the option. Agreed. Separated by a pause. We're bringing in a lot of really big concepts, right? It starts personal. What is America to me, the speaker? Okay, beauty is contingent lightness of the skin. So we're getting to larger issues. Then we get into liberty. Then we get into lies. Then we get love. And then we get illiteracy. And then we get settling for less. So there's a lot of like let's just mention it. Didn't consider the poem's term structure. I mean, anytime, and when a poem's designed to be read, it's obviously different than if it's designed to be spoken out loud. I think a lot of the formatting to me suggests that we're kind of thinking spoken right now, but I could be wrong. Feel free to let me know. We start off really individual and personal to me. And then from there, we immediately jump to kind of the grandiose and the big. And, this isn't an essay. It's not like we need to like dive in, make arguments and things like that. But I'm not entirely sure yet of the speaker's own investment in a lot of these concepts. There's a lot of issues going on here. There's issues related to beauty. There's issues related to skin color. There's issues related to also skin color, but also like pride in the color. Place where liberty. So we're talking about liberty and freedom. We're talking about lies, but we also don't know what these lies are about. Because if the poem were centered around, like entirely around skin color, then the lies could be associated with that. But there's so many other topics going on. We got love. We got settling for less. That's being associated with Netflix and chill vibes. And then it's a shame to see. And then we got illiteracy. So it's almost like every single line is like bringing in this whole other new concept. So it's like you're focusing my attention one way, then you're focusing another 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 way. But by focusing my attention in so many places, I'm not ever focused. Which, maybe it harkens back to that title, where you have like multiple, like this is like the same sound multiple times and things like that. But I think to me, it's hard for me to know the direction of what this poem wants to go besides this idea that I'm frustrated with a lot of different aspects. Which kind of leads me to also kind of wonder what inspired the poem. Because there's probably something specific that kind of triggered the initial thing. But right now, I feel like I'm being drawn in a lot of different directions. And the other thing, too, is that I'm being drawn in all these different directions, but I don't know why. I don't know why the speaker is invested in all these things. I don't know why, what the lies are. I don't know why love made it into this. I don't know why Netflix and chill made it into this. I don't know the idea of selling for less is a better principle. Like I see the rhythm and I see the lines, I see the meaning, but I don't entirely know. Like if I just sit down and think about it, steady quoting Netflix and chill vibes as if selling for less is a better principle. Um, okay, mentioning also that they want to write to perform. Got you. Okay. Um, because I think if I just kind of like sit with this, I'm like I don't entirely know what exactly is the settling for less that's occurring. What exactly is the idea that illiteracy can be viewed as something that's nutritional? What's suggesting that to the speaker? It's like, what is suggesting these concepts to the speaker? That's kind of the question I have when I read this. I think it's interesting. I think it's a good jump off point. But I'd really kind of be sitting down and be like, what does this actually mean? What does this look like? The other thing too is that this poem feels so there's different types of poems, right? There's poems that are based in irony. There's poems that are based on narratives, like storytelling, and then there's poems that are based on lyric. This poem is definitely lyric. Um, that being said, there may be some opportunities where we can try to ground the reader just to kind of let us know what is the direction you really want us to be taken down. If you have any questions for me so far, please let me know. Because it's great to have you here. And we don't always have the poet whose work we're looking at. So I want to make sure if you have questions about the piece that we're answering them as well. What is America to me? So we get the repetition of the question. This is the only time the question is repeated. Okay. So then the question is, why is it repeated? Why is it repeated just once? I was just saying the inspiration around the poem is essential question that's repeated. This repeated twice. Like the what is America? Okay. It's a very big question, which is obviously getting a very big answer. Um, I guess the question I would have to respond to that: do you think you could define what America is to you in 1, 2, 3, 4 stanzas? Is that enough to define what America is to you, or for the speaker, I should say? Why is it repeated just once? What impact does that have? No, because we didn't have to repeat it. It doesn't get repeated anywhere else, so we just repeat it once. So it's not like there are poems, like litanies where you repeat there's like a refrain or a line that you repeat over and over again. But this is not that. Um, and this isn't to say to remove it. It's more just to be like, why are we what by putting this here? What is the intentionality? What's the thinking behind putting that question twice? By putting the question twice, maybe it's like, oh, I want the reader to really understand that I'm trying to give this definition, and if I just say it twice, that's enough for them to get that concept. Okay, cool. But whatever the reason is, I just want to make sure there's a lot of intentionality behind it. Why is this happening? Or maybe it's a chance to reset and give a new group of definitions. I can see that because we're shifting a lot, where people lose hopes and dreams instead of following our own. That's kind of interesting, right? Going from people here to our. Because it could have been a place where we lose hopes and dreams instead of following our own visuals. There's an essay. I think it's in this book I'm reading. For this next line. So if you guys are reading this, I'm doing it. I've read it before, but right now I'm trying to go through this again and add in We're kind of just conveying knowledge. We're doing a craft series very, very slowly. We're just like reading craft essays and delivering the knowledge to you guys, in case you don't have time to read it. There's one here by Mary Rufolk called On Sentimentality. Wait, that's the essay in there. It's like the third or fourth one. Um, and it gets into a debate, a timeless debate in poetry about, like yous in the poem, we's in the poem, I's in the poem. What are they doing? Are they all the same? So, for instance, when I look at this place where people, italics mine, lose hopes and dreams, instead of following our own visuals, we sip, we become our, and things like that. So there's a lot of this like first person pronoun usage. Okay. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when that occurs, it certainly can stand in for a large group of people, but a lot of times it is really just the speaker. A lot of times we is really I. A lot of times you is I, and things like that. Um, so because what could be happening here is that we're creating distance from ourselves. So like we have individual experience, but instead of focusing on our own individual experience, we project outwards and expand. So the question that I have, or I would be kind of thinking about, is why kind of like projection outwards versus inwards? Because it's kind of like taking our personal experience, but then kind of like expanding it versus doing the opposite and really digging into our own thing. So a place where people lose hopes and dreams. What does that mean? If there are people who lose hopes and dreams, what does that actually look like? What do they lose? What is their hope? What is their dream? Instead of following our own visuals, these are some interesting lines. Punctuation is kind of interesting. So we get questions. Sometimes we have punctuation. Sometimes we don't. Um, for instance, are these the only periods? No, we have a period on principle. Then we have a period down here on pivotal. We have one of our few commas. Are there even other commas? I'm kind of curious how we decide when we're using punctuation and when we don't. So that would be something too, that I would kind of ask. How are we using punctuation in the poem? How are we, or like not using it? I'm not saying use it. I'm not saying don't use it. But I would say, hey, well, if you feel like the majority of your poem's not punctuated, what what's determining when we're using it and what's determining when we're not using it? By not using punctuation here, I like the ambiguity with the line break. So a place where people lose hopes and dreams instead of following our own visuals. I think that works. This will be that there's actually a break here. Dreams, period, quote unquote. Instead of following our visuals, we sip society's lean. Okay, it's like it could be that that line is going one way or the other, which I like. So I like that play there, which I think is really opened up by not using punctuation. I think a lot of ways the poem could probably get away with not using it, just because overall it's generally not. Place for people whose hopes and dreams instead of following our own visuals. How do we feel about this? Place would lose hopes and dreams instead of following our own visuals. You lose hopes and dreams instead of following our own visuals. We don't know what the hopes are, the dreams are. We also don't know what our own visuals are. We sip society's lean, force fed lies. We've been corrupted by the wound. Selling souls for bodily rituals, stereotypical. Okay. So again, we're introducing a lot more concepts. So what are all the concepts we talked about? We talked about beauty, we talked about skin color, we talked about kind of pride, we talked about liberty, we talked about lies, we talked about love, we talked about selling for less, we talked about illiteracy, we talked about losing hopes and dreams. We talked about this idea that we have our own visuals that we're not following. Okay, we talk about being force-fed lies. We've been corrupted by the wound. What is the wound? What is the actual wound? What are the actual lies? Lies keeps coming up, right? These lies are really kind of hanging over us. We lies here. And then we're force-fed lies. Interesting that up here they're an option, but now down here they're force-fed. So it's not really an option. Lies are an option and then they're not an option. We've been corrupted by the wound. We don't really know what the wound is. Selling souls. What does that mean to sell a soul? What does that look like, actually? For bodily rituals. I'm not saying this is happening in the piece, but I think a lot of times poets write around the thing instead of just saying the thing. You know, stereotypical. Taking social media narcotics as if clinical. Okay, so I like the consistent the word choice. I like the word choices here because they're very live intentionality with the narcotics and then also the clinical. So we're kind of extended. We have an opportunity for like extended metaphor here. This is probably one of the first times that's occurred in the piece where we've had kind of a general concept. It's like, oh, narcotics, drugs. Oh, let's try in clinics, health, and things like that. So there's like a relationship. Because right now the images and things like that are kind of coming from a lot of different areas, but this is a case where there seems to be something kind of unifying them, and I wonder if that could be something that could be explored with elsewhere as well. And it actually continues right with prescribed. So this is a unique section right here. We have the narcotics, we have clinical, and then we have prescribed. Okay. Just know we have a thunderstorm rolling through here. So if I lose power or something like that, my apologies. Online trends become our new traditional habitual. This hopes and dreams and following visuals. Some souls. So I think kind of going back to a lot of the earlier points too, there's the age old concept of like show versus telling, and I think right now we're getting a lot of telling. This has the kind of that sense of like we're standing up, shouting almost at people like, "Hey, this is a place where we lose hopes and dreams. This is where we're force-fed lies. We have been corrupted by the wound. Taking social media narcotics, are clinical. We are fiends for those prescribed. Um, subliminal online trends." Okay. So there's a lot of like telling me that these things are happening to me, but there's not necessarily a lot of demonstration of it. So I'm kind of just left to be. I have to take the speaker's word for it, and just assume everything they're saying is true for their experience. But I don't have any. I don't. The evidence isn't there, and so one of the things that's happening too is that because none of these ideas is getting a moment to really kind of like develop and sharpen. I don't know specific. It's hard for me as a reader to become invested in any single one because every time I'm given one, I'm then moved on to another one, then I'm moved on to another one, then I'm moved on to another one. So I'm never even really given an opportunity to become invested in any of these issues individually from a reader's perspective. You know, even if I agree with things that may be said, um, we're staying so much at kind of like the larger level instead of diving into even just one of these points and explaining how we arrived at kind of like these like conclusions and things like that because they're important. There's urgency here, but I think we're missing that kind of emotional investment. Oh, so now we have an I. So we've had the me. Where does I appear? Where does the speaker should reveal themselves? So they reveal themselves here. Speaker reveals themselves directly here. I mean, we could argue with the we's and things like that, but most directly, where the speaker is intentionally being the speaker. We got it here. We got it here. I hope what I'm spitting is considerable. Why? What if it's not? What's at stake here if it's not? Isn't it interesting? So this is appearing right at the moment where your turn would be. Typically, your turn in a poem occurs right around the 2/3 mark. Not always, but a lot of times. This almost is like it's not a sonnet, but the structure you're using is very similar to a sonnet structurally. You know, where you have your longer first stanza, longer second stanza, and then your slightly shorter last stanza after your turn, after your volta. So structurally, there's doing a lot of things that are similar to a sonnet. And this is right in that moment where things shift. Okay. And right on cue, we get this line. This line is very unusual for your poem. Because this is the first time where, one, the speaker directly appears as an I, where the speaker directly puts out kind of like an emotional thing. Like, I hope something. There's some uncertainty. Everything else has been very, very certain. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. But now we get, I hope, which I think is really interesting too, because from like a reader's perspective, you know, the one time where the speaker talks about kind of their own intentions, this is their moment of vulnerability, right? I hope when I'm, spitting is considerable. I don't know if it is. There's this the first moment of kind of vulnerability here, which I think is really interesting because that hasn't really appeared anywhere else. But as soon as that moment passes, we return. Don't you know ABC News is all fictional? Okay. How are we defining all like every single thing about it is fictional? All of it? The breaking news stuff, all of it? Everything? The weather? How are we defining this? No fact from history class was absolute nor conventional. Okay, so now we're going at the news. Now we're going at history. And then related, but also not necessarily related, all us blacks still get treated miserable. This is hearkening back to the first stanza with the pause. Us blacks still get treated miserable, and that's pitiful, so my position is pivotal. Oh, and interesting. That's why my news is deliverable. But you can hate me all you like, but you still worship Sam's principle. That line, I hope I'm going to spit is considerable because the vulnerability there is so interesting. And then the rest of the poem kind of just doubles down on everything before it. I think especially because like hope is such a strong word. Also, like considerable is an interesting choice, right? Like not like it's not like I'm not saying I hope you agree with what I'm saying. I'm not saying I hope you understand. I'm saying I hope you find what I'm saying is considerable. You don't have to. It doesn't have to change your mind. It doesn't have to do anything. But I just hope you find it considerable. I think that's such a very interesting word choice. I don't think it's quite what you would have expected. So my position is pivotal. What is the position? What is the actual position in the poem? I see a lot of critiques. We've been corrupted. We become fiends. Is the position that just like all these things are bad and wrong and horrible? I feel like a position is a lot of times more about like it's a solution or a take or on something. I was just saying it's been insightful going through my poem with a different lens of eyes. I appreciate that. That's the intention. It's hard to analyze your own work, right? Um, and again, it's pieces when they're performed in things. Obviously, that can change the how a piece is perceived, right? But like, if you were to ask, if you say all this, and then you tell me, if I was listening to this, and then you say, so my position is pivotal. Why? But I don't. I wouldn't actually know what the position is. I also wouldn't know why is it pivotal. What happens if I? What if I accept your position? That's pitiful. So my position is pivotal. Okay, let's say I agree with you. We're on the same team. You've convinced me. Um, I'm on your position. And I'm not saying I'm not on your position, but like imagine from like a reader's perspective. Bear with me. Okay. So I'm on your team. You convinced me. I'm on you. Now what? Why is this so pivotal? What happens next? What's next? Your move. But I don't know what it is. That's why my news is deliverable. Wait, my position is pivotal. That's why my news is deliverable. So because my position is pivotal, my news is deliverable. So if my position were not pivotal, it would not be deliverable. Right? Which is kind of interesting too, just kind of considering that thought experiment. So then these other points, I'm guessing, we're saying are not as so pivotal, but these are deliverable, right? in a way, because that's what people have already been fed. Have to think about that. Uh, then we get a U. Oh, well, that's interesting. Have we had a U this whole piece? Is this our first U? Dun, dun, dun. What an interesting separation, because we've had a lot of joining. There's been a lot of I and we, but now we have a separation. In fact, this whole last stanza is doing a lot of that, right? There's no we's in this last stanza. This is all me versus you. My position is pivotal. I don't know about your position, but my position is pivotal. My news is deliverable. You can hate me all you like, but you still do this. Right? It says, I never want to come across as preachy, but I thought that my poem was about the question and my answering of it. I think you're answering the question. I think the poem is about the question, and I do think the poem is about your answering of it. But then we get the question, does the poem feel preachy? And that's not something I've said directly. But if we just said, let's kind of just take the poem away for a moment. And you tell me if I come off as preachy. Okay? Beauty's contingent on the lightness of the skin. Glorification of melanin's a sin. Liberty isn't guaranteed. Lies are the option. Love's overrated. Selling for less is a better principle. It's a shame to see illiteracy's nutritional. We sip society's lean, force-fed lies. We've been corrupted by the wound, selling souls for bodily rituals stereotypical. We become fiends for these prescribed subliminal online trends. Don't you know ABC News is all fictional? No fact from history class was absolute nor conventional. All us blacks still get treated miserable. Does that feel preachy to you? Again, those were lines taken from different stances, you know? So I think that's kind of the question we need to ask ourselves. We had a stream that talked about this. I think this is a poem that's taking on a huge topic. A huge topic. I'm going to define a nation in many different aspects. That is a very, very tall order. It's not saying it can't be done, and it's not saying you're doing it or you're not doing it. It's just the magnitude of that sort of task is very large. Do people write books trying to kind of tackle the same sort of question? It almost to me kind of would be like a topic. Like I think each one of these topics you've brought up could have its own poem about it, if not multiple poems about it. You know, um, in terms of like skin color, in terms of liberty, in terms of the lies, in terms of settling for less. I think for me right now, as a reader's perspective, I don't know exactly. Let me put that. I don't know if exactly my own interpretation of some of these concepts is exactly the same as yours or the speakers. And so it's hard for me on the surface level. I can, I can work with this. I can rock with it. But if I sit down with it, I kind of struggle to be like, are we actually on the same page with all these things? Especially because we just keep naming more and more things. You know what I mean? So it never, there's like a common thread among everything. Everything's talking about, what is America to me? Not going to deny that. But I think all the little aspects of defining America become a little bit more challenging. Anyways, take everything I said with a grain of salt because, as I mentioned, it's late. It's a bit of a tired read, but also there's so much happening here, and I want to make sure I'm kind of doing all of it justice. Um, I'm gonna pause here. Alicia, if you have thoughts, feel free to post them, and I'd love to kind of go back to the piece and kind of point out some things that stood out to me. But that's just a real quick initial reading. There are some interesting things going on. I think especially as you get towards the end of the poem, I'm particularly interested in some of the things that are happening in the last two stanzas. Just I'll bring it up one more time. There's a lot of there's a lot changing in these final two stanzas in terms of the dynamic between the speaker and the you. There were moments earlier in the poem where we all felt very together, but instead, the end of the poem is playing with that, and we're getting a lot more separation. The we's are gone, and instead, we're actually kind of pitting the speakers actually. So I think that it's almost like pitting like speaker versus you in some ways. So I think it's really interesting. Also, because I think in some ways it's kind of all the things that the poem's kind of speaking to are also things that in some ways actually kind of end up happening to the speaker and to you at the same time, which I think is a very interesting dynamic. Final things here. Skip down some sentences. I have in there while reciting. Got you. So it takes a completely different tone. I understand most of that issues here. Cool. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your piece. It was great to read. I hope to see you around the channel and the platform more. I hope you have a good night as well. I know it's late there as well. Thanks for sharing the piece. Thank you guys for joining us today, doing some poetry editing. We'll be back next Sunday with some more. I hope you guys have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. Alicia, thanks so much for your time today. It's great to see you. Thanks for sharing your piece. Apologize for the delay in getting to it, but I'm glad we did. Lots of great stuff happening there. I'll see you all later. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. Take care.